Great to see you. My name is Blanca Duarte, and I am co-founder and president of LogicWing. We are a technology consulting company, so we work with school districts and businesses and many of the big tech corporations all around teaching people how to use technology to make their lives better. So our motto is, we help people and organizations use technology to live, work, and learn. And today, when technology surrounds us 24/7, we know that there are a lot of people who really need help trying to figure out, how to use the technology to do everything from like order supplies, to run their business, to use technology, like all of you, I'm sure. And so we really do our best to build those relationships with the companies and with the people and to help them. We work in service of. So when you're starting a business, there's two different types of businesses, and sometimes you can do both, but one type of business is like a manufacturing business, right? So that's a business where you actually build a product, right? So think about Apple. Apple builds iPads and iPhones, and so they sell those products. But you also need people to actually help people use those products. Another type of service business might be like an accounting firm or an architecture firm. They work and they provide professional services to organizations and people. So we are on that side of the coin in terms of businesses.
Absolutely. And can you tell the kids a little bit about your background? Like, how were you always into technology, or was there something, a type of catalyst that threw you into technology?
Yeah, sure. So I love talking about this because I think it just sometimes makes people more comfortable. So growing up, I wanted to be an astronaut. That was my first kind of big thing. Like, who doesn't want to be an astronaut? And I loved looking at the stars, and my parents bought me science magazines. And as I got older, I started thinking, oh, maybe I want to be an artist because I really love to draw and I really love to paint. And then I thought, oh, I really love to write poetry. I want to be a writer. And so for the first 20 years of my life, there were lots of different things that I was passionate about and that I was interested in. But then at some point, I decided, you know what, I want to have my own company. And I wasn't sure what kind of company I wanted, but I knew that I wanted to be like my own boss. Unfortunately, at the time, I really didn't know a lot of people who had their own businesses. My parents had a restaurant and it didn't do so well. So there was kind of always that fear, like, oh, if I start a company, it may not go well and I may not be able to do this for a long time. But at some point, I went to college and I became an accountant. And sometimes we become things that we see all the time. So my dad was an accountant. So I said, well, at least I'll always have a job because people make money and they have to figure out how to analyze their budget and how to file taxes. So, okay, I'll have a job. And so I actually did that for almost 10 years. I was an accountant, even though in my head, I wanted to be a scientist and an artist and a writer. And then at some point, I felt like, I think just one day I was sitting down looking at numbers on the screen and I was like, oh, what kind of value is this providing? And of course it provides value. When you're an accountant, you're providing value to a company, but it didn't fulfill me. It didn't make me feel like I was actually helping people. And so that's when I started thinking at changing careers when I was 30. I think I was 32. And I started to call friends up and I started to read, and I got really interested in educational technology. It was like a new field at the time. And it was all about helping kids learn using technology, to helping them use games, for example, to learn how viruses work, and helping them to build mind maps and, being able to bring in pictures and words. And it was just something that kind of fascinated me. So I found a friend that I had graduated with in high school who actually was in that field. And I called her up and we had a really long conversation. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to try this. So at age 32, already established in a field of accountancy, I went back to school and I got my degree in educational technology. I started to work for a school. I know this is a little bit of a long story, but it's it goes to show you, like, you never really know what you're going to end up doing in life. And so I started working for a school, and all of a sudden the big trend was giving kids laptops. Now, try and picture in your mind, I don't know how old you are, but if you're in high school, probably 10 or 15 years ago, laptops started to creep into schools. So there were some schools that actually started giving kids, every child, a computer. Today, of course, it's like a no-brainer. Most kids have computers in the classroom. But 15 years ago, there were many people who thought, oh, that's a terrible idea. Why would you do that? We're going to give kids paper and they're just going to do their work and everybody's got to do the same thing. So at some point when they started to do that in the United States, I got super curious. Again, I was like, oh, this is something else. And so I went to a couple of schools where every child had a computer, and kids were learning from each other, and it was just fascinating to me. So I was working in a place where they weren't quite ready to do that. And I said, I wonder if I can just quit, start my own company, go and study what that looks like, and then come back and help all the schools that say, oh, it's crazy, that's never going to work. And that's how I started my own business. So I was all these other things before, and I had all these ideas of what I wanted to be. And it just happened to be that there was a trend that I was really interested in. I really loved seeing kids be able to help each other and learn on their own. And voila, the company was born.
That's great. And definitely check out our website. I put it in the chat and you guys can continue messaging me questions. Is it okay if I jump right into some of the student questions I've already gotten?
Yes, please.
So one of the kids wanted to know, how have you seen the trends change from when you had mentioned there weren't a lot of computers and technology in the classroom to now there are? And that was a really great point that this student made. I mean, I've read somewhere that we've had more technological advancements in the past 50 years than we had in the past 2,000 years before that. So how have you seen that, and where do you see that trend going? I want to kind of elaborate on their question.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So 15 years ago, what technology and education looked like was a very traditional kind of like a center model. So if you walked into a school classroom, you might have one or two computers in the back of the room. Or in a school building, you might have a computer lab where there were 20 computers and everybody would come in once a week and learn how to use, the computer, maybe a word processor. When I first started in schools, there were these like 150-pound carts with really heavy computers in them that we had to push down a hallway, and we would bring them into a classroom and then give everybody a computer quickly, wait 10 minutes for it to connect to the network and the internet. Then they would work on the computers for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And then we would collect all the computers and then run down the hallway to another classroom. So in truth, it probably wasn't a very effective model, because when you only have computers for 15 minutes once a week, and it takes that much effort to log in and to do something, I don't think it was a very effective model necessarily. Well, about maybe 10 years later, we started to see schools where kids could just grab laptops from their classroom. So maybe every classroom had a cart. Well, jump forward now, laptops became much cheaper. So lots more schools could afford it. Schools also started to adopt mobile devices. So mobile devices like iPads and Android tablets are much easier to distribute. And basically, if your school can't afford one, sometimes schools have what's called a bring your own device program. So you bring your own computer or you bring your own tablet. The other change really is that the computers 15 years ago were kind of slow. They were slow to connect. The technology, even the wireless technology, wasn't giving you enough bandwidth to, load up pages very quickly for you to do work. And today it's much, much faster. So I would say that we went from like a cart model where maybe kids were seeing computers once a week to now we all have computers in our pockets, right? Because we have, so many people have smartphones. And I'll tell you, especially when I travel, but even when I don't travel, I use my phone to do a good portion of my work if I'm answering emails or I have to go into a spreadsheet. So that's one huge shift, that I've seen in the classroom. In terms of what are some of the trends that I see now? So in the beginning, we saw a lot of the schools were teaching their kids office programs, right? Your productivity suite. So you were using things like Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint, right, to pull together presentations. And then about 10 years ago, we saw more movement to the cloud-based products. And with the introduction of Google Workspace for Education now, and also Microsoft 365, now you were able to get the software on your mobile tablets and you could be anywhere and access it, right? I could be in my own house and I could open up a browser window connected to the internet and start working. So we went more from productivity tools, like the word processor and the presentation tools, to having more access to more software anywhere we were. So now, I don't know how many of you use like art software like Adobe or architecture software like CAD. And, there's lots more programs. WeVideo, for example, is an example of like video software. And you only need an internet connection. You don't have to like go out and buy a piece of software and then update it every year. So we definitely have moved more from productivity tools to more creative tools. And then just in terms of how schools are using technology. So again, in the past, the way we use technology was we use software to do things like write a paper or create a presentation. What I see more and more of today is, and especially the last 2 years since the pandemic, because we all went to virtual schooling, is I see a lot of use of learning management software. So software where you guys can go online, you can, in a couple of clicks, you can watch a video, you can answer some questions, and maybe your teacher has some other activities for you to do if you have more time, right? So you can almost like learn on your own. Well, now Google has, and I don't remember the name of it, but Google has a technology that they are trying out with schools where kids are actually learning and there's artificial intelligence kind of baked into it. So after you watch a video and you answer some questions, you get a little survey, and the survey will ask you maybe, did you enjoy that? Or what else do you want to do with this information? Or, what can we do to, what's the next thing you want to learn? And then the program will automatically set you off in a learning path. So let's say that you're learning about social studies and history, and one of the things that you're really interested is like immigration law. So you may learn a concept, and then at the end of that video and those questions, it may ask you, what do you want to learn next? And you can say, well, I want to really learn, I want to learn more about the laws of immigration in my country. And you'll click a button and it will just take you to another module where you can learn that. So what I'm seeing is the introduction of artificial intelligence in education, which is going to allow all of you to really learn the way that you want to learn using the topics that you're really interested in.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge need for that. I mean, yeah, I've seen that as well with the introduction of artificial intelligence. I've even heard from these people that they're talking about artificial intelligence teachers for students, where your teacher is actually an AI robot. So that would be kind of creepy, but also kind of cool at the same time. So one of our kids here, they wanted to know, would you have always, looking back, would you have always thought that it was better that you had all these kind of eclectic backgrounds? Did it kind of help you become a better business leader? Or would you have preferred to go straight to the LogicWing path? Because we've had astronauts on here. We have an astronaut coming up. I'll put it in the link. You guys can sign up to speak to her. She was one of the first female astronauts, and Blanca, you and your family are invited as well. But someone like that, like, she always wanted to work in astrophysics or science or whatever it may be. There was never kind of deviating around the path like what Blanca was talking about. So are you glad that you had all of those experiences?
Yeah, so I actually am. I think just from the time that I was a young child, I was interested in so many things. And I was curious about the way things worked. And so you basically could have put me in front of, I could be sitting in the garden and I'd be studying why the bees had like a certain, why did they have 6 legs instead of like 10? And so I was always questioning things. And I think just it's my nature to question. And so it was also growing up. So my parents were super flexible. They had different jobs growing up. They started a business when I was 10. So that was kind of, unique because my life wasn't like other people's lives. And I think, and like I said, they didn't necessarily succeed in their business, but they never stopped trying to do new things. And so sometimes I think it's a matter of your personality and who you are. And I love every single job that I've had throughout the years because I think it's just opened my eyes and helped me build a skill set that has helped me in my role, as a president of a technology company, because I'm always flexible and I'm always like looking for the next thing. But I also think that there are some of us who really have this deep, deep passion for like one thing. And so I have a friend, for example, who even as a 5-year-old, he loved going on cruises with his parents. And as a 5-year-old, he would put on the captain hat that his parents had bought him and said, I'm gonna man this ship one day, And so very, very focused like on that. In his whole life, when he went to college and after college, he always just wanted to be that one thing. And so everything that he did was, to where he is now, where he actually, I think the other day, and he's kind of young still, but, he was driving a ship, like it was crazy. So for me, because of my personality, I think, and because of the way I grew up, I just really I have enjoyed the journey and dipping my toe into different things. And I feel like it has made me a better business person because again, in technology changes so rapidly that you really need a mindset where you're open to change and you're open to like, being able to pivot in technology. So for example, there are lots of companies who didn't really take advantage of technology before the pandemic, who all of a sudden the pandemic, they couldn't make money if they couldn't use the tools online and they couldn't move online. And for some of these companies and people, they lost their entire business because they weren't able to move fast enough. They weren't able to adopt those technologies. So I think for me personally, being in technology, it really did help. But I think it's also, it depends on who you are. If you are someone who's super focused on building the next app that everybody wants to use, then that's great. I just happen to choose a little bit of a different path.
Absolutely. And I've read some projections somewhere because you mentioned technology changing so much that at least here in America, we're going to be something like a million jobs, employees short. There's going to be basically 1 million openings in our country for technology related jobs. These are very like lucrative jobs apparently. So if you guys are interested, there's like coding and all this different kind of stuff. And if you guys are on Collegiate, we have Code Combat, definitely check that out. I'd mentioned sending those links in the chat. So if you guys want to sign up for any future guest speakers, it's right there. And if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and email them to me. Blanca, before we let you go, is there any advice that you could give to these kids as they kind of go off into the world and figuring out what kind of industry or career that they would like?
Yeah, so I probably have a couple pieces of advice. I think one is to not give up. There are going to be lots of challenges that you come across, and some of those challenges won't even be like business challenges. Some of them will just be life challenges. We have really big problems that we haven't solved yet. And so the one thing that I would say is if you have a dream, work to build your skill set, work to find out everything you can about whatever that topic is. And even if you don't succeed in the beginning, just keep trying. Find other people to work with, find people who can help you. And that kind of leads into my second piece of advice is don't be afraid to ask for help. When you build a business or you do anything in life, really, your success isn't really just your success, right? It is a, conglomeration of like every person that you've met, every person that taught you something, people that you meet, people that you work with. And so sometimes when you run a business, you feel like, oh, if I don't know the answer, then that means I'm not really any good at this. And the truth is that you yourself are not the business, right? It's your whole team. So if you need help, ask people for help. If you are thinking of creating a business, for example, but you don't know anybody who's ever started one, reach out, find people. You can find people on Twitter. You can find business organizations in your communities. You can reach out on Twitter to some of your favorite business people and go, hey, do you have 5 minutes for me? What advice would you have, would you give someone who wants to start XYZ? Because your relationships are really what are going to help you succeed in life, and whatever success looks like for you, right? If the reason that you want to have a business is because you want to be able to make a lot of money and have like a really, crazy lifestyle and, be able to visit like every country in the world, awesome. But for some of us, success means that you get to work at your own pace. It means that you can take your mornings off and go down to the beach and take a walk. And then in the afternoons, you can work, 3 or 4 hours, and maybe that's enough for you. Maybe you would prefer to just have a quieter, simpler life and enjoy your family, right? So don't look at success as like, oh, success means, I only have success if I make this much money, or if, I'm able to buy these things. Like success is going to look different for each and every one of you. And I think that that's really important to just come to terms with and not get wrapped up or in someone else's version of what success is for you. I have a business. I love it. I enjoy being able to work at my own pace and to be able to take on the clients that I want to. For me, my success looks different than maybe what another person who has the same kind of company looks like. So, don't give up, be persistent, and don't be afraid to ask for help.